Food web, food web, food web. What is food web? Food web is simply the relationship between all living things, because all living things are potentially, if not practically, food. Food web in your aquarium. Aha! Now, what is that? Food web in your aquarium. It is all the living things in your aquarium, which may be food or may be predators or may be nurtured by the organics, the non-viable organics, the broken down leaves, the dirt, the detritus, all of that. The plants which survive on such material, they're part of the food web. Looking more deeply into your tank, what do you see? Here's a tank. Can you see all of the life in that water? This is actually a picture of a tank, an aquarium, taken early in the morning just as the lights came on. These are all of the animals that were up and about from the beginning, that were up all night. They emerged from the humus, the detritus at the bottom of the tank, came up into the water column, floating around on the plants and functioning as tiny little critters that very small fish look for, thrive on, develop their livelihood from. Food web. Let's look at another. On Discord, I have a whole series of pictures on a channel called Food Web. Here's another good example. Food Web. Now, this is someone who sent us a picture of their Vallisneria floating on the top with very long leaves, and all the leaves are little tiny, you can see the white, little tiny midges. They're little tiny hopping critters. They're actually a sap eater. They suck sap from the plant, and guess what? The little fish in the tank eat them. Let's see what, let me get back to this. This is from Hannah Robinson. She says, I've had some type of green fly residing on top of the Vallisneria since the summer. I was going to trim the plants down to get rid of the bugs, but then the fish started hunting them. Now they are part of the food web in my tank. Ah, food web. There's a perfect example of the food web at work in an aquarium. What does it look like? Here's I don't know if we can see this very well. Let's try this one. This is a picture through a hand lens. Let me try to get it a little bigger, maybe. Whoops. Get over here. if you look carefully, you can see worms all on the glass. These are generally nematodes that are food for little fish. This is food web. These are animals that are growing in your tank, feeding on the waste that is created in your tank. Waste comprised of so many different things. Waste comprised of, for example, leaves. See if we can find a picture of some leaves. I know there are some here. Ah, here's an, whoops, let me get about it. Well, I tell you what, let's go to something else. This is green water. Now, what is green water? Green water is single cell algae free swimming in the tank that creates such a dense culture that it turns the color of the water green. Now it's actually, the water is not green. What you're seeing is the thousands and thousands of tiny little one-celled algae. Why is that significant? What is that? What does it do? How does it share in the food web? Well, it is food. It is food for a lot of different, generally microscopic animals. Animals that eat things like green algae. Let's see if we can find, oh, here we go. Let's look at this. Here's a good example of a food web in an aquarium. Now, if you look carefully, this is the tank we were looking at. See the little hand lens down here? We were looking right in this area at little worms living on the algae that's growing on the glass. This is a gravel tank, gravel over dirt. It's a very tiny gravel, like a washed river gravel that contains driftwood plants and leaf mold. There's some dead leaves right here that are comprising the nutrition for the food web. So that's a perfect example of a balanced tank with a food web. Doesn't look all that spectacular, does it? But it is an amazingly alive system, thriving in some very important ways. Let's see, I can find, oh, all right, here. This is a good example of how we begin a food web. This is a bucket of mud and sticks and leaves taken from a local creek. Doesn't look like much, does it? I mean, it looks kind of bad, doesn't it? This is by Earth Inspired. Took plants out of the creek. And of that is going to create, well, let's see. I combined all of the ingredients for the dirt layer last night. Now we're about to set up everything else. So this is the beginning of a food web. We begin with a dirted substrate. A dirted substrate, 1 inch of dirt, preferably dirt with nutrition added to it. Now, I sell a package of additives that go in with the dirt that prolong the life, the vitality of that dirt for up to several years, long enough for the natural process to become substantially developed and to be able to provide nutrition through the natural processes occurring in the tank. So you take all of that, put it together, cap it with sand, and then add to the top of that this humus. Humus. Humus is the foundation of life in all freshwater bodies of water all over the world. You put humus in the tank in order to create the food web. Now, where do you get humus? Well, here's a perfect example of where you get humus. This is a creek bed. Actually, it's a pond bed. You can see the leaves on the bottom. You can see some plants growing out here. You collect this, collect mud, collect the leaf mold, and you begin by setting up what we refer to as a resurrection jar. Here they're digging some of it up. A resurrection jar is simply this mud put in a jar with water from the same location set in your windowsill. And in a matter of days or weeks, you'll see an enormous variety of animals growing and thriving. You take that then and install that in your tank in order to create that food web that forms the foundation of all life in your aquarium. Now, why do we want to do that? We want to do that because that is what naturally provides nutrition and life support for the little fish and the plants that you want to be growing in your aquarium. So we have the basis of it now. We have a deep substrate. We have dirt that is collected from the wild. Here's a good picture of it. Dirt collected from the wild. And allowed to thrive and placed right on the top of your deep substrate. And it creates a living environment. So try this. Try it at home. Try to see what you can do in your aquarium. Look at the Daphne. Can you see the Daphne? There's so much life in here. It's just thriving. Look at these are little Daphne swimming at the top. That material at the bottom is loaded with all kinds of life. When you get this growing in your food tank, you have something that will be stable and strong and healthy and keep your fish alive. Oh, golly. Keep your fish alive for months and months. You need to add a little extra leaf mold to it on an occasional basis, but this is the idea. This is what you need to do to create a food web. A food web that will balance your aquarium, will give you something that will sustain itself for years into the future, will provide nutrition for your small fish, and will be a source of joy and pleasure and a delight at being able to share in the wonder of nature. See you around in yours and my next food web. Bye for now. Father Fish here. join us over on Discord, where you can learn so much more about this and so many other things. Bye for now.